Greetings. This is Greg. Today we focus on Tesla ignition revoked. Uh, we also take a look at Elon has a tweet out in which he describes um, what's going on currently with a possible gigafactory in Texas, which in theory should be a counterweighing factor, but doesn't seem to have had much impact. I have to admit we are trying a new mic out today, so if you can hear me, please let me know. If not, also please let me know. We can do a quick switch to another mic. Cool. How's that? We're trying out a new mic here to try to improve the sound, and let's try this. Great. Okay. Again, wanted to thank Oaken, one of our supporters, for the help with a new mic, and we're just getting comfortable with it here a little bit. To review, our topic today is Tesla's ignition revoked by a couple of its largest supporters, and therefore we could see why stock price was down yesterday afternoon. The second thing we cover is a tweet by Elon regarding a possible gigafactory in Texas, which may potentially have an impact on sort of the downdraft we're seeing currently. And so we also have our health tips, and we also have a discussion, an options possible discussion. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. We wanted to also thank our Patreon supporters as well as our subscribers. If you enjoy the show, please take time to like and subscribe. We also appreciate you guys mentioning, do we need to lower or raise the gain? It is a new mic, so we're sort of testing out a new equipment here. So the first thing I wanted to note is that I actually have a kind of a one-on-one hour-long course that we do in terms of teaching people the fundamentals of options and sort of options trading. So if that's of interest to you and you're a Patreon supporter or not, we wanted to sort of run this by you because when you have the gains that people have experienced over the last couple of days, if you don't plan to sell, perhaps hedging is an option that you might want to consider. So we wanted to sort of throw it out there as something that you might want to consider. And if you don't have knowledge of it, it's possible you can do classes or go online. But we also have maybe an hour-long course with about a half-hour Q&A afterwards that I think would sort of catch you up to speed and might save you a decent amount of money. So I also wanted to note we do have tomorrow coming up a private show where we do get sort of deep into what's going to happen on Friday. And so if you're at the $20 level as a Patreon subscriber, you will get that show tomorrow. And I think you'll like sort of what's covered heading into the weekend, given that there's a lot of volatility, and sort of go through ideas on how to protect the gains that you've enjoyed. So our first item that we wanted to cover is trading fundamentals. So there's a guy named Colin Roust who works for a company called Oppenheimer. Yesterday, as you'll notice, the stock price kind of tailed down at the end of the day, maybe 60 points in a short period of time. We didn't know why that was immediately, but what I kept thinking about throughout the day was that there are different quadrants that you enter when you're trading in a trading zone, as well as, be it stocks or options or other instruments. And so one of those zones is sort of the period where earnings come out, and then people see what the earnings are, and everyone sort of builds their models based on what happened with those earnings. Prior to that, it's sort of the domain of analysts who can upgrade or downgrade and can have a big impact on what happens to the stock. So we kind of we're now beyond the 3-day mark. We're at the 5-day mark from when earnings were announced. And so we're kind of in a zone now where over the next couple of weeks, unless there's a company announcement or vehicles rolling out of China heavily or things like that. We're kind of in a trading zone that's kind of controlled by analysts, and so their process of either upgrading or downgrading can really impact stocks. And in this case, it was kind of an interesting situation because what we were waiting for is a few other analysts to join the $800 to $900 price target range that Tesla might achieve. And yesterday afternoon, around the time the stock dipped, Colin Roust from Oppenheimer, who's been a big time bull on Tesla, was saying, look, you know, when I gave the upgrade, I was targeting 612. If I look at my model, there is a case. Um, the There is a case that you could see it, maybe a little bit higher in that 700 range, but that 900 range is sort of above the model that I have for it. So he didn't necessarily downgrade it, but he just reiterated the fact that he had targeted an above $600 price target in his models, and he could justify that based on certain calculations for that. So he didn't become negative. He just stayed on his number. The other thing that happened is there's a gentleman at Concordia who kind of moved from a accumulate to a hold. Same situation. Stock is above justifiably what they had forecasted to occur, and so therefore it is a downgrade to a hold from an accumulate. But the point in general is that what you're kind of looking for to get the folks in the large institutions going is sort of, I want to say, support in the form of upgrades even at the current price point, because the large institutional managers are trying to protect their jobs, and part of that process is that if you have the coverage of having outside consultants validate a certain price or target range, it makes it easier to go ahead and do that purchase, because if something good or bad happens, they can roll off of that comfortably. So it's my sense then that, you know, I, I mean, based on what's been described, it kind of smells to me like what's really happened is, instead of us getting the nice upgrades from a couple more people and everything steady as she goes for Tesla, we're sort of getting the downgrade indicating we're probably 100 points ahead of what their models are. So based on how this is all playing out, I would not be surprised to see Tesla sort of ease back into the maybe low 800s, high 700s, and sort of hang out in that space. Is it possible it could go lower? Absolutely. And this is kind of one of the reasons why we were suggesting that, if you're a long-term holder, it's not a big deal. 100 or 200 points up or down, it's not a big deal because the companies are doing extremely well. If you do have some really nice gains, this might be, an opportunity for a little bit profit taking as a way to sort of, not give back some of the gains you've enjoyed. And frankly, this is also an opportunity to perhaps look at sort of hedging that a little bit by using options to sort of ensure the gain that you have versus sort of giving it back and having to wait another 5-6 months before it comes back again. So you do have a few options, pardon the pun, on the table to address this. So my take on this whole thing is that sounds logical to me. The analysts that were bullish were targeting $700 to $800 a share. We're above that, and it looks like the short squeeze situation really got going, and we really don't have sort of the support for the institutions to continue to buy at these levels. So a pullback into that, like I said, mid to high 70s, low 800s would not be a shocker, and we kind of looking forward to riding out that neighborhood for a while until we could find growth basis, et cetera, that would justify different numbers than that. So the question is, what numbers or kind of what happens next? I think Elon tried to help the situation by doing a survey on Twitter to determine whether or not Tesla should build a gigafactory in Texas or not. I was kind of surprised. I mean, they already had the German thing going, and wow, I just realized something, which is that Elon has started spending a lot of time in Texas because while SpaceX has a facility in Los Angeles at its headquarters, uh, there's actually um, uh, there's actually this huge SpaceX facility where they kind of bought a whole town. So, given how Elon likes to structure things, um, I guess it wouldn't be well. It was an interesting story. It's worth watching. They kind of bought all the houses in this town and sort of turned it into a SpaceX compound, kind of in the middle of nowhere, Texas. And because they already have the land there, Elon's spending all that time there. Um, it is kind of a centrally located spot across the country where they could get raw materials into the port of Houston or one of the other major ports there, and sort of service things out of there. So um, I can't argue that it would not occur. And he did point out that there's a real need for more batteries, which would drive further the growth of the company. So I guess this is going to bear some more investigation, and once we get more information, we'll obviously share that with you. Um, the next thing that we wanted to cover is the fact that you know I've been very impressed, surprised at the number of folks that have done huge amounts of money on Tesla's run, and I want to say congratulations if you're among them. It's a thrill to see the company do as well as it is. Um, I have to say that I'm a little surprised right now at a couple of things regarding Tesla, and that is that right now it's going to be a tough trading day for Tesla, and Elon somewhat did some relief in terms of the potential of a gigafactory in Texas. So I think that'll help a little bit in terms of the thinking process of everybody. But the one sort of question that's coming up to me is everyone is enamored with Battery Day when it comes up, and I think the batteries are obviously important. The issue, though, is that think about batteries and how things have worked out for Tesla. What I mean by that is that um, basically Bob Lutz and company, all these folks, made the assumption that all they had to do was put a large number of batteries in the vehicle and it would be superior to what Tesla is doing. And then the big firms could swing back in and retake all the market share they might have lost to Tesla. Those big companies did the same thing. So 100 kW battery from, for example, VW or Daimler or uh, Jaguar is sitting next to 100 kW from Tesla, you know, in a similar type of vehicle. The Tesla is going, at best case, almost 400 miles, and in regular case, like 320 miles. And you're seeing 200 miles, best case, from the competitors. And so the question mark that comes up is, well, how is it that Tesla's getting so much range, maybe even in a case double, but at least 50% better range than its competitors in this regard? Answer, software. So one of the fun things we talked about previously is the fact that Tesla has an interesting situation because they're having battery day, they're having autonomous day, but one day they've never held is a what's going on with software day. And I think that it's very clear based on what was articulated by Daimler that in fact the big advantage Tesla has is software. And I think it's amazing how much attention Tesla has everyone focused on regarding the battery and the number of factories and all that stuff. And their true advantage is in the software. Um, as you go into this area, you better get an idea of why we've suggested that um, it might make sense to start to learn a little bit about, I'm not saying learn Linux, but Tesla's vehicles run on Linux. Ubuntu is sort of a Linux offshoot that helps you sort of do new and different things. And so one of the things that's going on here is Linux is open source. Tesla is running on it. In theory, you would think open source would mean more risky in terms of potential being hacked or other things, but there's a lot of customization. There are things that are being done with Linux that make it a superior sort of operating system to build in for companies like Tesla. I think it's kind of an interesting thing to watch that one of the competitive disadvantages that might be experienced by Daimler and some of the other OEMs that are competing is that they're operating with Microsoft systems or some of these systems that don't lend it to the flexibility and creativity that people can use if they're Linux capable. I don't know if you guys saw it, but I do think that the 2-hour interview show that was done with Elon was extremely well done. And one of the things that was shared there is that Elon is sort of on the bleeding edge of some of the best programmers in Silicon Valley. So when it comes to sort of core fundamentals of thinking through the battery or the battery technology, certainly, but also the software side, he's sort of on the bleeding edge of new and creative things that are being done with software. And so what we have going on is not necessarily people just competing with Silicon Valley. It's the fact that when you have open source, you have the potential for millions of programmers around the world to be working on Linux and helping even Tesla solve problems. So their engineering team ends up being way bigger than the actual company because of having sort of this back end that that they have going on. So I think so. Therefore, I don't think there'll ever be a software day because how important it is. And I'm kind of blown away that how good the software is, given that Daimler knew the problem when they had Tesla building products for them 5-6 years ago. But even with 5-6 years of time, Daimler hasn't been able to close the gap. And as you may recall, one of the things we pointed out was Tesla's unwillingness to share this software with Daimler was one of the reasons the two broke up. Because Daimler wanted Teslas, not only the battery packs that they produce for the smart car and for the minivan, but they asked for the software controller side as well, / thermal management. And Tesla said no. And so this, I think, was the beginning of the end for the relationship between the two companies. And I guess it kind of makes sense because of how valuable it is. So we wanted to kind of get out there ahead of what we're hearing today and why, to sort of answer the question of what happened yesterday afternoon. I wanted to note that we'll have our regular show tomorrow morning, but we'll then have a private show as well. If you're at least a $20 Patreon supporter, you'll get access to that show tomorrow, and I think you'll find that we'll be covering some useful material. Also wanted to remind you we do have kind of a one-on-one sort of options trading session. It lasts about an hour. You can email us at admin@Teslafaninsight if you're interested in scheduling some time to go through that process. And we'll schedule it in for an hour session to do that. Also, wanted to remind you, please take time to like and subscribe. We look forward to hopefully a recovery day for the stock, but won't be surprised if we see a little bit of a dip there related to what we covered at the front of the show. So once again, want to thank all of you for your support. Thanks for help with the new equipment in terms of its management process. And we'll have to do a little editing to fix the front end of the show where there was no sound. So we apologize to you for that. Any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Don't forget, 25 leg lifts a day. Strengthens the quad muscles, reduces knee issues. Also, don't eat within 2 hours of going to bed, preferably 4 hours, let it completely digest so you don't get any acid reflux issues. The 5-2 diet or something else in that realm of fasting is a great thing for mental health as you age. Also wanted to, well, as you know, I got a lot of health tips, so some interesting ones I want to cover for tomorrow, but let's leave it at that for now. Once again, thank you again for joining us. Have a great day. Thank you, Oken. The mic is looking good, and the plug-in to the camera is working as well. Have a great day. Bye for now. Thank you.